Sergeant Miles Torrance pressed his face against the warm receiver of his M14 rifle as artillery shook the ridge. His fingertips traced the crude wire modification he'd fashioned the night before, a simple copper coil that had no business being attached to a United States Marine Corps sniper rifle. Yet there it was, wrapped around the gas system, altering everything about how the weapon behaved. Through his red-filled scope, the North Vietnamese army positions felt impossibly distant, far beyond the effective range of any M14. But Sergeant Torrance knew something his commanders didn't. The Russian-made Dragunov SVD rifles in enemy hands had been picking off Marines for weeks from distances once considered unreachable. It was August 7, 1967, 10 miles south of the DMZ in Quang Tri Province. Torrance's unit, the Scout Sniper Platoon attached to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, had been ordered to establish observation posts on a ridge overlooking a valley where intelligence suggested a major NVA force was massing. The date burned in Torrance's memory. It marked exactly 1 year since he'd arrived in Vietnam, 1 year of watching men die because their weapons simply couldn't shoot far enough. His spotter, Lance Corporal Daniel Rourke, shifted uneasily beside him. "Sergeant, they're gonna fry you alive when they see what you did to that rifle," Rourke muttered. "Hell, they'll court-martial you for damaging government property." Torrance didn't answer. His focus locked onto an enemy sniper nest 800 meters away, nearly 300 meters beyond the documented effective range of the M14. He controlled his breathing, feeling the rough wire press against his cheek. "I count 4 of them moving into position," Rourke whispered. "Too far, we should radio this in, let artillery handle it." But Torrance knew artillery would be too slow. The lead NVA sniper was already setting up. In minutes, dozens of Marines moving through the valley below would be exposed, oblivious to the crosshairs settling on them. Rourke hissed, "What are you doing? You can't hit that." "Watch me," Torrance replied, squeezing the trigger. The rifle cracked with an unfamiliar force, the first sign his desperate modification was behaving exactly as he'd theorized. Through the scope, he saw the NVA sniper collapse. Before Rourke even processed the shot, Torrance had cycled the bolt and acquired the second target. No one knew that one unauthorized weapon modification would rewrite the rules of engagement across the entire province, saving more than 2,000 Marines from walking into a killing field. And no one expected that a black Marine from rural Mississippi, once discouraged from even touching a precision weapon, would be the one to do it. The man behind the shot, Miles Torrance, was born on April 18, 1944 in Greenwood, Mississippi, the third of 5 kids in a sharecropping family. His father, Elias Torrance, had served in a segregated World War II unit, earning commendations that meant everything overseas but almost nothing back home. Despite that bitter truth, Elias taught his children patriotism and the belief that excellence couldn't be ignored forever. The family owned exactly one firearm, an old Remington bolt-action Elias used for hunting. By age 8, Miles could hit targets grown men struggled to see. His father nurtured the gift even though it could bring trouble. In Mississippi back then, Torrance recalled, a black boy who could shoot wasn't something people celebrated. "But my daddy used to say, 'Son, God gives gifts for a reason. Don't you dare hide yours.'" School opportunities were scarce, but Torrance excelled in mathematics and physics, knowledge that would later shape his understanding of ballistics. His science teacher, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, secretly provided him advanced textbooks that colored schools were never supposed to have. "That woman changed my life," Torrance said. "She showed me the power of knowing why something works. Power no one could take from you." After graduating in 1962, Torrance enlisted in the Marine Corps despite his mother's fears, drawn by the promise of opportunity after President Kennedy's integration push. At Paris Island, he endured hostile recruits, ruthless drill instructors, and the exhausting pressure to perform twice as well for half the recognition. But when he picked up a rifle, everything changed. He shot expert 48 out of 50, at ranges many recruits couldn't hit at all. His drill instructor pulled him aside. "Torrance, I don't care if you're purple with yellow polka dots. You shoot like that, you've got a future in my corps." Still, the path to becoming a scout sniper remained unofficially closed. Few black Marines were allowed near those positions. Torrance was assigned to infantry instead, where he earned respect for his discipline and skill. When his enlistment ended in 1966, he re-enlisted, knowing Vietnam would soon be the ultimate test, and that his shooting ability might one day be the only thing keeping his fellow Marines alive. The DRAGUNOV problem when Torrance joined 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, Vietnam was in transition. Officers trained for European warfare struggled with jungle combat, while the NVA fought with Soviet discipline and cunning. By early 1967, the Dragunov SVD, purpose-built for long-range precision, began appearing in NVA units. The SVD offered accurate fire out to 800 meters and beyond. The American M14, max practical range 500 meters. The 300-meter gap became deadly. Between January and June 1967, the battalion lost 17 Marines to sniper fire from distances they simply couldn't return fire to. Troops called them ghost rounds, bullets from nowhere. Invisible killers operating beyond reach. Requests for more M40 sniper rifles stalled in the supply chain. Gunnery sergeants joked the rifles were struck from some mythical armory in heaven because they certainly weren't coming to Quang Tri. That gap, the fatal 300 meters, haunted Torrance. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to fix it. The modification in July 1967, combat losses forced staff to assign Torrance temporarily to the scout sniper platoon. It wasn't standard, but they needed shooters and Torrance was the best. Staff Sergeant Warren McLean, the platoon leader, made his skepticism clear. Don't get comfortable, Torrance. You're here because I'm short-handed. Scout snipers train together, you don't. Torrance was paired with Rourke, a brilliant wind reader still shaken after his previous partner took a round through the scope. The unit had mixed weapons. A couple of M40s for senior snipers and 4 M14s with scopes. Torrance immediately asked, "How come we don't all get M40s?" Gunnery Sergeant Wyatt grunted, "There's 8 M40s in the whole regiment. The M14 is fine if the man behind it is fine." But Torrance knew it wasn't enough. 3 days later, he watched helplessly as an Alpha Company patrol was hit from 900 meters. 5 men died while he and Rourke lay there, able to see the enemy but powerless to return fire. Artillery arrived too late. That night, while others played cards or wrote letters, Torrance stripped down his rifle and stared at the gas system. The Dragunov wasn't magic, it was engineering. The M14 bled too much gas into its cycling mechanism, reducing bullet velocity. What if he restricted that gas flow, more pressure behind the bullet, higher velocity? Longer range, but less gas for the action meant reliability issues. Failures to cycle, danger in firefights. It was illegal, dangerous, and absolutely against Marine Corps regulations. But 5 dead Marines weighed more than the rulebook. He went to supply Marine Corporal Rico Davila, known as the battalion's unofficial problem solver. "I need copper wire, 16 gauge, and quiet," Davila smirked. "What's it worth to you? My next 3 packs of cigarettes." 5, 4, and I forget about the PX items that keep showing up in that village down the road. Davila grinned. Deal? That night, Torrance sat under flashlight, carefully wrapping the copper coil around the gas system, creating a crude makeshift regulator. A 75-cent modification that would change the war. Rourke caught him mid-assembly. "What are you doing? Changing the rules. That's against regulations. Only if it doesn't work. If it works, they'll be pinning medals on me instead." Rourke shook his head. "You're crazy." Staff Sergeant Cunningham assigned positions to his sniper teams. "Torrance, Rourke, you'll take observation post 3 on the eastern ridge. You'll have visibility of the main approach routes from the north. Standard protocol, observe and report. Do not engage unless directly threatened or specifically authorized." Torrance nodded, feeling the weight of his modified M14 slung across his back. Rourke shot him a nervous glance but said nothing. The 2 Marines departed the outpost before dawn, moving silently through the wet underbrush. The eastern ridge was a long, difficult hike, and they needed to be in position before first light. "You actually going to use that thing?" Rourke whispered as they climbed, gesturing to Torrance's rifle. "If I have to, and if it doesn't work," Torrance paused, considering the question, "then I guess I'll have died trying something instead of watching more Marines die while following orders." Rourke fell silent. The rest of their journey passed without conversation, each man lost in his own thoughts. They reached observation post 3 just as dawn lightened the eastern sky. The post was a shallow depression reinforced with sandbags and camouflaged with local foliage, but it offered an excellent vantage point overlooking the valley and the network of trails that fed into it from the north. As the sun rose, the valley came alive. Birds called from scattered trees and a light mist hugged the ground, lending the landscape an almost peaceful air. Both Marines knew the deception in that peace. They settled into their observation routine, trading turns on the spotting scope and keeping a log of everything they saw. The morning passed uneventfully. They saw local farmers moving between small villages, but no enemy activity. By midday, the first elements of the 7th Marines began appearing at the southern end of the valley. Small columns of men moving cautiously along established routes toward their positions. Torrance estimated nearly 500 men were visible from their position, with more arriving hourly. The reinforcement operations seemed to be proceeding according to plan. At 1,438 hours, everything changed. Rourke's voice tightened. "Movement on North Ridge, 2 o'clock. Multiple figures moving into position." Torrance swung his scope to the indicated location. Through the magnified optics, he could see at least 6 NVA soldiers establishing crew-served weapons positions. 2 carried the distinctive profile of Dragunov SVD rifles. Range? Torrance asked. Rourke checked the map and rangefinder. 820 to the nearest, 850 to the ridge position, well beyond the effective range of a standard M14. Rourke keyed the radio. Command, this is Sierra 3. We have visual on enemy forces establishing positions on North Ridge. Approximately 6 to 8 individuals including sniper teams. Request permission to engage. Over. The reply came back, Sierra 3 negative on engagement. Range is beyond your capability. We're scrambling air support, maintain observation and provide updates. Out. Air support was at least 20 minutes away. Those Marines in the valley were walking into a killing zone. Through his scope, Torrance watched as the NVA snipers completed their setup. One was already in firing position with a spotter beside him, weapon trained on the valley below. They had a clear shot at hundreds of exposed Marines who had no idea of the threat above them. The moment of decision arrived. Torrance settled his modified M14 on the sandbag rest and ran calculations in his head: distance, elevation, wind, and the estimated effect of his modification on bullet velocity. All theory until now. What are you doing? Rourke hissed. Command said no engagement. They said no engagement because they think we can't hit them from here, Torrance replied calmly as he adjusted the scope. They don't know what this rifle can do now, and neither do you, Rourke protested. This is crazy. If you start shooting, you'll give away our position. They'll zero in on us before you can get a second shot off. Then I better make the first one count, Torrance said. He settled his breathing into the rhythm he'd practiced thousands of times. 4 seconds in, 2-second hold. 4 seconds out, 2-second hold. His heartbeat slowed and the world narrowed to the crosshair over the lead NVA sniper nearly half a mile away. He made final adjustments for elevation and windage, adding a significant holdover to compensate for the distance. Then, between heartbeats, he squeezed the trigger. The modified M14 reported with a sound noticeably different from its normal crack. A sharper report and a distinct ping as the restricted gas system forced more pressure behind the bullet. The recoil was heavier, driving the rifle hard into Torrance's shoulder. Through the scope, he watched the NVA sniper jerk backward and collapse over his rifle, a hit at 820 meters with an M14. For a moment, Rourke was speechless, then training took over. Hit target down, shift fire, second sniper moving to cover 10 meters right of original position. Torrance worked the action and fired again. The spent casing arced away and the bolt felt stiffer than normal. The reduced gas pressure was affecting the action. He acquired the second target and fired, another hit. The remaining enemy scrambled for cover, shocked by accurate fire coming from a distance they had thought safe. They're trying to locate us, Rourke warned as one enemy scanned the ridge with binoculars. Third target machine gun position laying down suppressive fire 860 meters. Torrance compensated for the greater distance and fired a third shot. The action was sluggish now. He had to assist the bolt's rearward movement manually, but the bullet found its mark and struck the machine gunner. Rourke keyed the radio, voice electric. Command, this is Sierra 3. We have engaged enemy positions, 3 confirmed hits, enemy snipers neutralized, request permission to continue engagement. Over. The radio erupted with questions, but Torrance remained focused. Fourth target moving left to right, carrying radio equipment 840 meters, Rourke called. Torrance tracked the running figure, led him slightly and fired again. The radio man fell, 4 shots. 4 hits, distances previously impossible with an M14. The remaining NVA soldiers abandoned the ridge. In the valley below, the Marine columns continued their movement, unaware of how close they had been to disaster. Rourke struggled to explain the engagement to skeptical officers on the radio while Torrance inspected his rifle. The gas system was hot through his gloves, and carbon buildup was already affecting the action. His modification had worked, but at the cost of reliability. A few more shots and the rifle might fail completely. Command wants us back at the op immediately, Rourke said finally, ending the radio conversation. Captain Morrison is personally coming to debrief us, and Sarge, he doesn't sound happy. Torrance wiped down the rifle and slung it. Did you tell them about the hits? Yeah, they didn't believe me. Said it's not possible to hit targets at that range with an M14. Did you tell them about the modification? Torrance asked. Rourke hesitated. No, figured that was your story to tell. Besides, they'll see it soon enough. As they gathered their gear to return to the outpost, Torrance looked once more at the North Ridge and then down at the valley where hundreds of Marines moved on, oblivious to the danger that had been removed. What happens now? Rourke asked. Now, Torrance replied, I either get court-martialed or get a medal, maybe both. Neither man could have predicted the real outcome. Torrance's unauthorized modification would lead not to punishment alone, but to a fundamental reconsideration of sniper doctrine and equipment that would save thousands. The return to combat outpost Eagle was tense. Word of the engagement had spread and a crowd gathered as Torrance and Rourke approached the command bunker. Staff Sergeant Cunningham intercepted them. "What happened out there, Torrance?" "Command says you engaged targets at over 800 meters with an M14. That's not possible." Torrance met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Staff Sergeant, it is possible. I just did it. I want you to inspect my rifle." Torrance unlunged his M14 and handed it over. Cunningham noticed the copper wire wrapped around the gas system immediately. His expression darkened. "You modified a service weapon without authorization. Do you have any idea how many regulations you violated?" Before Cunningham could finish, Captain Morrison emerged from the command bunker and the debriefing began. Morrison and Major Bradford questioned them relentlessly. Rourke's spotting log was checked, distances verified, and Torrance's rifle was inspected by the battalion armorer. "Explain exactly what you did to this weapon, Sergeant," Major Bradford asked. Torrance explained, in precise technical language, how restricting the gas system increased pressure behind the bullet, raising velocity and extending range. He described the trade-off, reduced reliability and the need for more frequent cleaning, and how he had developed and tested the idea in the field. "You developed this on your own?" Captain Morrison asked skeptically. "Yes, sir. Based on my understanding of internal ballistics and observations of the Dragunov's performance." The officers exchanged glances. Bradford leaned forward. "Do you realize your unauthorized actions violated at least 7 different regulations regarding service weapons?" "Yes, sir." "And do you also realize your actions possibly saved the lives of hundreds of Marines in that valley today?" Torrance blinked, surprised at the shift in tone. "I hoped they would, sir." Bradford sat back. "A patrol sent to the North Ridge after your engagement confirmed 4 enemy KIA, including 2 with Dragunov rifles. Based on their position and the movement in the valley, intelligence estimates they could have inflicted significant casualties." For the first time, the magnitude of what he had done sank in. Torrance waited as they considered the problem. "We can't officially condone unauthorized modifications," Morrison said. "That would create chaos. But we also can't ignore a tactical innovation that addresses a specific threat," Bradford added. He examined the copper wire on the M14. "How reproducible is this? Can you train others to apply it correctly?" "Yes, sir. It's not complicated, though refinements could make it more reliable with proper materials and testing." Bradford nodded. "We need to involve Battalion R&D if this is standardizable. It could provide an interim solution until more appropriate weapons arrive." Morrison agreed. "Sergeant Torrance, effective immediately, you are temporarily assigned to the Battalion Research and Development Team. You will work with our armorers to refine this modification and develop a standardized procedure for its application." "Is that clear?" Torrance, stunned, replied, "Yes, sir." "As for the unauthorized actions," Bradford continued, "there will be an official reprimand in your file. Unofficially, that reprimand will carry very little weight going forward." They left the command bunker and Rourke nudged him. "Told you they'd give you something." "A reprimand isn't a medal," Torrance said. "No, but it's a hell of a lot better than a court-martial," Rourke answered. "And R&D practically a compliment." Over the next 3 weeks, Torrance worked with the armory section and visiting weapons specialists. His crude copper coil evolved into a precisely machined gas regulator that could be installed or removed as needed, allowing snipers to switch between standard and extended range configurations. Tests confirmed what Torrance had demonstrated. Properly modified M14 rifles could effectively engage targets approaching 900 meters under ideal conditions, rivaling the Dragunov's performance. By early September, standardized range extension kits were being distributed to sniper teams throughout the 1st and 3rd Marine Divisions. The technical manual credited field innovation by combat personnel without mentioning Torrance by name, a deliberate anonymity he understood and accepted. What mattered to Torrance was that snipers now had a tool to counter the enemy advantage and that lives would be saved. In late September, during Operation Medina, sniper teams using the modified M14s neutralized concealed sniper positions and reduced casualties. Colonel Marcus Williams noted in an after-action report that the modification had directly contributed to operational success and reduced casualties. By the end of 1967, NVA units in Quang Tri had altered their tactics. The psychological advantage they had exploited for months had evaporated because of a 75-cent modification conceived by a sergeant who refused to accept that the problem couldn't be solved. An analysis by 3rd Marine Division Headquarters in November 1967 estimated the range extension modification had directly contributed to preventing approximately 2,000 casualties among Marine units operating in the province. It also noted that the ability to counter long-range sniper fire improved morale and reduced combat stress casualties. For Sergeant Miles Torrance, the aftermath was mixed. The official reprimand remained in his record, but alongside it came a Navy Achievement Medal with Combat V for technical innovation under combat conditions, carefully worded to avoid explicitly mentioning the unauthorized modification. In October 1967, he was offered Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton upon completion of his Vietnam tour, an acknowledgement of his contributions and marksmanship that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "I never set out to change policy or make history," Torrance later reflected. "I just couldn't stand watching more Marines die because our rifles couldn't reach far enough. Sometimes solving the problem in front of you is more important than following every rule in the book." Lance Corporal Franklin Rourke, who had witnessed the innovation firsthand, carried the lesson throughout his career. He rose to Master Gunnery Sergeant and became an influential voice in weapons development programs decades later. "Sergeant Torrance taught me that sometimes the best solutions come from the Marines who are actually facing the problem," Rourke said in a 1992 interview for the Marine Corps Gazette. The Torrance modification, never officially bearing his name, remained in use through the remainder of American involvement in Vietnam. Its principles influenced later development of adjustable gas regulators that became standard on many precision rifles. Miles Torrance completed his second tour in February 1968 as the Tet Offensive began. Upon returning to the United States, he attended Scout Sniper School as promised, graduating second in his class despite the lingering prejudices of the era. He served as a sniper instructor at Quantico for 2 years before leaving the Marine Corps in 1971. Like many Vietnam veterans, especially those of color, Torrance returned to a nation still struggling with its identity and its feelings about the war. The recognition he had earned among fellow Marines meant little in civilian life, and the technical innovation that had saved thousands of lives remained largely unknown outside military circles. Torrance returned to Mississippi briefly before settling in Atlanta, Georgia, where he used the mechanical aptitude that had served him so well in combat to build a successful career as an automotive engineer with General Motors. He married Eleanor Jenkins, a schoolteacher, in 1973, and they raised 3 children together. For decades, Torrance rarely spoke about his military service, let alone his specific contribution to Marine Corps combat effectiveness. The story might have remained buried in after-action reports, and the memories of those who served alongside him, if not for a chance encounter at a Vietnam veterans gathering in Atlanta in 1989. Colonel Walter Cunningham, long retired from the Marine Corps, recognized Torrance immediately despite the 22 years that had passed since they'd served together in the Scout Sniper Platoon of 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. "You're the wire man," Cunningham said, extending his hand, "the sergeant who figured out how to make our rifles outshoot the Dragunovs." Torrance was stunned that Cunningham remembered him, let alone his modification. "That was a long time ago, Colonel. Not so long that I've forgotten. Do you have any idea how many Marines are alive today because of what you did?" That conversation led to Torrance's story finally emerging into public view. Cunningham, by then a military historian, documented the development of the range extension modification and its impact on operations in Quang Tri Province. His paper, published in the United States Naval Institute Proceedings in 1991, finally gave Torrance recognition that official channels had been reluctant to provide during the war. The paper caught the attention of the Marine Corps History Division, which conducted extensive interviews with Torrance and others involved in the development and implementation of the modification. These interviews formed the basis for a case study on field innovation that became required reading for officers attending the Marine Corps Command and Staff College. Major General Franklin Riley, once the nervous young lance corporal who had spotted for Torrance on that fateful day in August 1967, summarized the legacy of the modification in the foreword to Cunningham's later book on Marine Corps snipers in Vietnam. Sergeant Torrance's 75-cent solution to a million-dollar problem exemplifies the best traditions of Marine Corps innovation. Faced with a tactical challenge that was costing lives, he applied his knowledge, skill, and initiative to develop a solution when none was forthcoming through official channels. His willingness to risk his career to save his fellow Marines represents the highest ideals of the Corps. In 1997, 30 years after his unauthorized modification changed the course of combat in Quang Tri Province, Miles Torrance was invited to the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Quantico as a guest of honor. There, before an assembly of sniper instructors and students, he was presented with a plaque commemorating his contribution to Marine Corps sniper doctrine. The plaque, which now hangs in the school's Hall of Innovations, bears a simple inscription beneath a mounted copper wire similar to the one Torrance had used. Sometimes courage means knowing when not to follow orders. Sergeant Miles Torrance, USMC, August 7, 1967. During the ceremony, Brigadier General Howard Matthews remarked, "The Marine Corps has always prided itself on developing warriors who can think independently and act decisively when circumstances demand it." Torrance exemplified these qualities when he recognized a problem that was costing Marines their lives and found a solution that official channels had not. For Torrance, then in his 50s and a successful engineering manager at General Motors, the recognition came with mixed emotions. "I appreciate the honor," he told the assembled Marines, "but I've always felt I was just doing what needed to be done. Any Marine worth his salt would have done the same if they'd seen the solution I saw." The true impact of Torrance's innovation extended far beyond the immediate tactical advantage it provided in Vietnam. It helped drive a fundamental reassessment of sniper doctrine within the Marine Corps, emphasizing the critical importance of range parity in counter-sniper operations. This reassessment influenced later sniper platform development, including rifles that incorporated many ballistic principles Torrance had intuitively understood and applied with his crude copper wire. Perhaps more importantly, his story became a case study in the value of empowering frontline troops to develop and implement solutions to the challenges they faced directly. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, who commanded the Scout Sniper Instructor School from 1995 to 1998, put it succinctly in a 2002 interview. "We teach Torrance's story not just for its historical significance, but because it embodies a principle we want every Marine to internalize, that they are empowered to solve problems even when doing so requires questioning established doctrine or procedures." This legacy of empowered innovation proved particularly valuable during counterinsurgency operations in Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 21st century, where conventional doctrine often proved inadequate for complex, rapidly changing challenges. The spirit of Torrance's 75-cent solution lived on in countless field modifications, tactical adaptations, and procedural innovations developed by new generations of Marines. The specific concept Torrance pioneered, restricting the gas system to increase muzzle velocity and effective range, reappeared in various forms in subsequent decades. Modern precision rifles often incorporate adjustable gas blocks that allow shooters to fine-tune the system for optimal performance with specific ammunition or operating conditions. An advanced implementation of a principle Torrance had applied with simple copper wire in 1967. Miles Torrance passed away on June 12, 2011, at age 67 after a brief battle with pancreatic cancer. His funeral in Atlanta was attended by hundreds of Marines from multiple generations, including retired Major General Franklin Riley and several former members of the Scout Sniper Platoon with whom he had served in Vietnam. In his eulogy, General Riley spoke of the man who had changed so many lives. Mitch Torrance never sought recognition or acclaim. He saw a problem that was costing Marine lives and he fixed it. When asked why he risked his career on an unauthorized modification that might not have worked, Torrance once replied, "In combat, being right is more important than being authorized." That wisdom saved thousands of lives, and it's a lesson every leader should take to heart. Following Torrance's death, his family donated his Navy Achievement Medal and the original prototype of his gas system modification to the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. These items are now displayed in the Vietnam War Gallery, alongside a brief account of how a black sergeant from Mississippi changed Marine Corps sniper doctrine with 75 cents worth of copper wire. The story of Miles Torrance illuminates a truth often overlooked in military history. Some of the most consequential innovations arise not from formal R&D programs, but from the initiative and ingenuity of individual service members facing immediate life-or-death challenges. In the hills of Quang Tri Province on August 7, 1967, Torrance faced such a challenge. The established doctrine and equipment were inadequate, and official solutions were not forthcoming quickly enough to save the Marines moving through the valley below. Rather than accepting those limitations, he applied his understanding of physics and ballistics to create a solution official channels had failed to provide. In doing so, he demonstrated a form of courage different from, but no less valuable than physical bravery. It required moral courage to risk career and reputation on an unproven idea, driven by the conviction that saving his fellow Marines was more important than adhering to regulations that were costing lives. This tension between following established procedures and adapting to overcome immediate challenges has long confronted military organizations. Rigid adherence to doctrine provides consistency and predictability, but can lead to catastrophic failure when circumstances outpace institutional adaptation. Conversely, unbounded innovation risks chaos and the breakdown of necessary standardization. Torrance's story offers a middle path: innovation driven by necessity, guided by expertise, and ultimately validated and institutionalized through proper channels. His initial unauthorized action was followed by systematic testing, refinement, and official adoption of the principles he demonstrated, creating a virtuous cycle of bottom-up innovation and top-down implementation. The Marine Corps' embrace of Torrance's idea, despite its unauthorized origins, reflects an institutional culture that values effectiveness over rigid procedure when lives are at stake. For today's military leaders and organizations, the 75-cent solution offers enduring lessons. Frontline personnel often possess unique insights into tactical problems. Creating pathways for those insights to influence institutional practice is essential, and the courage to innovate in the face of bureaucratic resistance is as vital as physical bravery on the battlefield. As we reflect on Sergeant Miles Torrance's legacy, we might ask ourselves, would we have the courage to break the rules when lives depended on it? Would we recognize the solution others had missed? And would our organizations have the wisdom to embrace innovation even when it comes from unexpected sources? In an era of increasingly complex security challenges and rapidly evolving technology, these questions remain as relevant today as they were in the hills of Quang Tri Province more than half a century ago. The 75-cent solution that saved roughly 2,000 Marines reminds us that sometimes the most valuable innovations are not the most expensive or prestigious ones, but those born of necessity, ingenuity, and the moral courage to act when others will not. Comment below and share this story so others remember what courage really means. Not just the courage to face enemy fire, but the courage to challenge established thinking when lives hang in the balance. Miles Torrance's legacy isn't just about a copper wire that extended the range of a rifle. It's about the enduring value of empowered innovation in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges.